getting ready. So when that's going to be this Saturday between 8 and 1. It's at Convergent Technologies, which is over off of Polo Road. It's in Belgrade.
That's a pretty cool practice.
Would you like to?
He unmuted something.
Unmuted.
Okay. I don't hear it anymore. So it's over by Belgrade, the shop, the Bruce Chris and all of that. So it's in that shopping. It is on Saturday, so 8 to 1. If you are free and want to come out, you guys are actually going to be the ones putting it on, right? So
We're going to do a little something.
Okay. I got the impression Mike was out of town. Is he back?
That was the last one.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it is.
So the idea is to get everybody that is going to RVA Sec or anybody that's ever interested in competing in a CTF, getting some experience in doing so before the actual event. So OffSec RVA is the next thing. I'm sorry, RVA Sec is the next thing that's on the event. That's happening next Thursday and Friday. So the Thursday and Friday will consist of a bunch of speeches and talks, and then Friday, if you don't go to any of the speeches or talks, it took me about 10 minutes to figure out how to turn the TV on. So the CTF will kick off on Friday. Thursday and Friday will be a bunch of talks, and then all right, so Thursday and Friday we'll have some talks, and Friday it'll be a CTF. So if you want to participate in the CTF, come to the OffSec RVA on Saturday to get a little bit of a tuner. And then we have our June and July meetings. So June and July, I don't think that we have the location and venues quite yet ironed out, so that'll be up soon. Black Hat and B-Sides and the DevCon are coming up, so y'all were, if anybody's going and is interested in attending, register here so we can all catch up when we get out there.
Everybody, anybody with the ISC Square advertising on the discount for Black Hat for ISC Square members in their email today?
$200, right?
Huh?
It was $200.
Something like that. I don't remember. They didn't read the whole thing, I just noticed it.
Yeah, so you get a discount for being ISC Squared, not chapter members, but ISC Squared proper. For being members with ISC Squared, you get a discount to Black Hat. Still got to get your own way out there and all that fun stuff. So, so those are the newest things that are on there. If you're going to any of those events, you'll notice like the RVA Sec. If you register, and we've talked about this before, but if you haven't heard it yet, you go out there and register. If you're a member of the chapter, then you'll be able to see the chapter, then you won't be able to see all that information. So, and then it's up to you if you register and are a member, don't want everybody to know, don't register, or say you don't want to know, you don't want to be identified. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the chapter scholarship challenge. So it's regrettably, we have to let you guys know that the Center for Cyber and Information Security, whatever it is, Center for Cyber Safety and Education, they are not doing a mass marketing campaign for the chapter challenge this year, which means like last year, we'll be the only chapter competing or participating is probably a better term. So no other chapters that I know of are going to be participating again. So we are going to participate. What we would like to do is blow it out the water and double or triple what we did last year so that ISC Squared and the center can start marketing this thing and get more scholarships for more students. Granted, those won't all necessarily be in our area, but the 2017 updated article, 3.5 million jobs will go unfilled in cybersecurity, 2021. So we need to be filling that pipeline, and by not doing the challenge, I think it's not helping matters, obviously. So the reason we are going to participate, we have the paperwork, we're going to get that in. They did update the website though, so the cutoff for funds is August 30th. when you go to this page, if you as an individual contribute, or if you have an employer or someone else that's interested in contributing, if it's an employer and they need the an invoice in order to get the tax credit, then contact me and I can help arrange that. When Northrop Grumman and Lumos did it the last 2 years, the center sent them an invoice for the amount that they pledged, and then once they sent in the funds, they were able to claim that on their taxes. So you can do it as well, but you don't necessarily need the form that ISC Square, well, the center will provide. So the cutoff, main thing I want to talk about there was August 31st is the cutoff. There's a little bit of leeway if your company's grants and things of that nature don't come out before August 31st, but on a case-by-case basis, you can get an extension on that. So just let us know. We did have to do that 2 years ago for one of the contributors. So last year we raised 5,350. So we want to increase that goal this year. I don't know what we want to set that at, 7,500 or something. So we'll probably be at 10. I saw that. Anybody want to say any more? So Chandos 15. Chandos just pledged 10,000. Anybody else?
And the cutoff for Norfolk will probably be August 18th, right?
I don't want to get into that.
What a bump.
So, what else is going on? That's the biggest stuff I wanted to talk about, chapter related. Want to thank Tom for coming in and doing his speech. I'm kind of interested in hearing about crypto mining and Bitcoin mining or something. If I'm not paranoid at the end, as am I.
For those of you that don't know, it's common knowledge already, but VEDA gave Northrop Grumman a termination notice last Monday, not this past Monday, but the Monday before last. The company that I work for, Slate Consulting, is a sub to Atos, which is a prime, who's a VEDA program. If you go to our website, we have a number of openings, everything from cyber incident analysts to firewall engineers, positions that we're staffing up rather quickly. If you're interested, go to slateconsulting.com and look at the job recs. So that's all I had for this. Yeah.
All right. So, Tom, I didn't get a huge bio, but what we did get, I know you work for GE, and no? That's what I thought it said.
It's definitely not what it said. Well, I mean, I worked for GE when I was in college, but
Dominion Energy. Dominion Energy.
kind of the aircraft engine shop, if that helps, you know.
So IT, that's what I get for winging it, right? IT risk management at Dominion Energy, responsible for overseeing all the company's IT risk management enterprise support activities, also responsible for development, implementation, and maintenance of promotion of corporate policies and procedures. That sounds like what I do. To cost effectively protect computer-based information assets from intentional and inadvertent modifications, disclosure, and destruction. So the stuff I like. Provides direction and guidance to other businesses units to help identify assets and manage potential risk of corporate information assets. 1998, huh? Good stuff.
1998.
Is your microphone working?
I think so.
All right. Well, thank you for coming. And,
Sure.
Over to you.
Do we need to swap this out?
Yep. Hour.
Nah, it should be. Been plugged in all day. It should be fine for the next however long you guys are willing to listen to me ramble on.
Be surprised.
Yes, no. I just did that.
Oh, yeah, did I? That's it.
It's doing something. There we go.
Just not touch it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Test one solved, right? I don't know why I'm still spinning, but we'll just move that out of the way. Ignore the blue spinny circle. All right, so crypto mining. I think we all have seen enough articles about it. We kind of have an idea, but try to boil it down to kind of what is it and how do we stop it? I know some people here have heard this presentation before, I think. So the jokes will be the same, but maybe you get something else out of it today. So let's start with kind of what it is. Cryptocurrency, right? It's everything that's old is new again, I guess. If you think back in the old days before there was a central bank and before there was a central clearinghouse for things, right? People exchanged. First it was goods for goods, and then cultures came up with their own, here's what we're going to use as our kind of currency, whatever that might be, beads, fur skins, whatever that was, right? And you wanted something from me, you gave me a certain amount of skins. I wanted something from somebody else. I took those skins, I gave them to them, they gave me goods for that. So it wasn't the straight barter of goods for goods. It was goods for something that became currency, right? Then the central bank system came along, and now you had a third party that sat in the middle of all these transactions and guaranteed the currency. It was official legal tender. All that fun stuff happened. Cryptocurrency, we're just right back to the old way, right? I have a peer-to-peer exchange, except instead of changing goods for goods, I'm going to give you goods. You're going to give me a certain amount of cryptocurrency. And I'm going to go use it when I want to buy something from someone else who's willing to accept my cryptocurrency for whatever goods they have that I want. So it's not really a new concept. It's really a very old concept, just applied in a new way. Should we be surprised that it's gone electronic? Probably not. Does anyone carry cash? Very few, right? Very few people, or occasionally, right, carry cash. Or maybe you have an emergency, you know, stuck in the back of your billfold somewhere. But I know I don't walk around with cash ever. Don't carry it. Most people don't. So why should it go? Well, we shouldn't be surprised that it goes commercial. Who does anyone? This is a fun question, especially when you look around the room and see the variation in ages. Does anybody remember the gas pumps? They used to have two prices on them. One for cash, one for credit, right? There's a reason for that, which is the gas companies had to pay the credit card companies to take those transactions for them, right? So you paid more for credit. If you walked in with cash, you get the same amount of gallons of gas. You actually paid less for it because there was no middleman involved. So it's like all those Visa commercials nowadays, right? Where everybody's in line and the world's just cruising along and everybody's swiping and someone walks up with cash and the whole world screeches to a halt, right? That's the world we live in now. It's kind of moves seamlessly to cryptocurrency. There's a lot more. You'll probably hear me say the word Bitcoin every now and then. Just know that that's kind of generic, right? It's like Kleenex for tissue and all those kind of things, right? There is more than just Bitcoin. Obviously, there's Monero, there's Litecoin, there's all kinds of crazy ones that it seems to be more and more open source project that says, let's make a new cryptocurrency, and off they go and they put some out in the market and somebody uses them. So they come in every day. But why do we know, right? I'm not buying my lunch with it, right? There's certain things that it's kind of come and been known for. It's been known for ransomware, which is a big one, right? They ask you to pay in cryptocurrency. If you think of the old movies in the old days, right? When ransom was always about some famous guy's kid got kidnapped, and they would call up and demand a ransom, and it would be show up with a suitcase with this much money in it, throw it over the overpass at such and such a time, right? And they'd walk away with the cash. Well, now they just say, pay me in Bitcoin, or pay me in a cryptocurrency. And the reason they do that is it's a peer-to-peer exchange. There's no central bank in the middle that's clearing that transaction. It's harder to trace that way. The other way you hear about it is these get-rich-quick schemes. Probably 6 months ago, it was more prevalent, right? The value of Bitcoin was exponentially rising. Some of that has kind of calmed down recently. And then the third thing you hear about cryptocurrency is what we're here to talk about today, which is crypto mining. So in order to do anything, right, in our world today, someone's got to make money off of it, right? We all like to say that that's not true, but it is, right? So if you can't find a way to make money, you probably aren't going to invest a lot of time and effort into what you're doing. So there's got to be money in it. So to understand why crypto mining exists, you got to understand a little bit about how it works and how do they make money on it. So just think of the Visa transaction you have today, right? You show up anywhere, you want to buy something, you take it off the shelf, you bring it up, you give them your credit card, and they swipe it for you. In effect, what just happened is the credit card company paid the merchant for that good that you just bought. They, in effect, loaned you money, right? You were walking out of that store with whatever you purchased, and the merchant is getting paid pretty much automatically by the credit card company. So for that service, the credit card company takes a little fee off of that, right? 1%, 2%, depending on how much volume that vendor does. So they get paid on the way in. At the end of the month, what happens? You get a bill from the credit card company, right? They're calling your loan. Your loan's due. Here's all the charges you had during the month. Your loan's now due. Everybody knows what happens when you don't pay off a loan, right? They charge you interest. So the credit card company makes money on the back end of that transaction if you're not paying off your full amount that you owe them, because this is money they've loaned you. A lot of people don't think of it that way, but they are loaning you money every time that you swipe a transaction. So if you're a credit card company, it's a pretty good gig, right? I made money from the merchant on the way in of the transaction, and I potentially make a boatload of money on the back end on interest to the actual consumer. So if you wonder why Visa and MasterCard and all those guys can sponsor all the things that they sponsor and can have Super Bowl commercials and all that stuff, this is how they're making their money. I'll give you a quick example. My son's baseball team, it costs us whatever, $100 a month or whatever it is for him to play, which is weird in today's world too, but it happens. The guy who he does is a small business, and he said, I'm tired of chasing people for checks. I'm going to accept credit cards. So he started taking credit cards. It was great for him. He didn't have to chase a single late payer ever. But he immediately lost 3% of his profit because it all went to the credit card company for carrying the transaction. He doesn't take credit cards anymore. He'd rather chase down the people because he's a small business and he can't afford to pay that. So how does it work in crypto mining? It's a very, very similar model. If I want to do a transaction with you, I give you money, give you my Bitcoin or my cryptocurrency out of my wallet. You take it, and I'm off with my goods and services. The transaction, however, isn't done yet. The Visa transaction happens almost immediately upon swipe, right? Since they built the old days of Visa, remember you had to run your card. They made a little imprint, they gave you a carbon copy, and then later they batched them all up and sent them through. Nowadays, with everything's connected everywhere, it's pretty much automatic, electronic, it goes through. In the crypto mining world, that transaction goes and sits out in a network. And all the transactions just sit there and spin, and they wait. Somebody has to come along and actually make those official transactions. That's where the miners come in. That's their job. They come in and they find all these transactions that are floating around waiting to be completed. They batch them up and they put them into a format that the network can assume this is all valid, these are all good. Yes, accept and post these transactions. For that, as you can imagine, they get a fee. So it's just like a credit transaction going, they get a little kickback, a little piece of that transaction, and that's how they're making money off of the deal, okay? So that's kind of how it's similar, but how's it different? In today's world of the credit card companies, it's a fixed network. They're sending across these transactions one by one, across this network, and they're being processed. In in the open and think of the cost as a business, right? Don't think about it from an IT for a second. Think of it from a business. I can go start my own credit card company, right? Anybody can do that. But think of the cost of the barriers to entry of that cost to do that, right? They're all part of this network. They all pay for all that service. You got to print all the cards. You got to have a bank that's backing you. You got to have insurance. You got to have all that stuff. That's very difficult to do. You probably won't see, it's been Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, maybe. Anybody know any other credit card companies anymore? Right? They don't really exist anymore, right? Because they've built the network. It's very hard to break into that fixed, established network. In the crypto miner world, anybody, just a race. So the first person that can solve the transactions that are out there gets to commit them to the network, and they win. So there is, in theory, a whole lot of cost and a barrier to entry to start up a business to make it happen. So they get in there and they get these transactions, they throw them together in a block, and they create, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. They create a hash of that block, right? And if that hash meets the requirements of the network, and they do it first, they win, they get to commit the transaction, they get their little kickback from it. What they do to make it unique is they create this thing that they call a nonce, which is just a made-up word, right? Us IT guys like to do that, right? We like to just make up words and give them our own definition. Stands for a number only used once, so it's really kind of a big contraction of that phrase. And what it does is it gives this, if you think of, I grabbed this block of transactions, you grab this block of transactions, someone else grabbed this block of transactions, if you just hash them without adding another value, they're all going to be the same. So everyone adds in this extra thing that only they do. And when they do it, then it changes that hash value, right? So that's why they have to add this little extra piece in there. These numbers get really big. You're talking about a SHA-256 hash, hexadecimal format. You got all these names, 16 choices for each digit. It's a big algebra problem. Right? If you think about it, it's just math, right? It makes it perfect for computers, right? It's just a math problem. To me, it sounds like high school, right? Algebra, bunch of made up words, don't really know what I'm doing yet, trying to figure out the world, right? It kind of feels like the same thing to me, but that's the world that the miners live in. So that seems really easy, right? If you think of math and you think of algebra and you solve an algebra problem, math tells us that same solution for that same algebra problem should work tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, right? It's math, it doesn't change. Well, so what they do is they change the rules. So they only want a certain number of transactions to process and close at any given point in time. So it's kind of anyone can play on the network, but it's not an immediate solve. It will never be an immediate solve, I don't believe. So what they do is they change the requirements of the algebra problem a little bit. So every time you solve, you're solving something that's similar, but a little bit different. And that's why people have written software to try to figure out the answers to those problems, because you would never be able to do it. There aren't many people out there, I think, that could do it, by hand. Be very difficult. Could roll a bunch of dice, I guess, and come up with a SHA value, a bunch of times, but that would be hard to do. So if they're changing the rules constantly, and the goal is the first person to solve it wins, and it's made for computers, right? That basically creates an arms race in the computing power world. So the first person to get it goes, so speed, solve this complex problem, do it faster than anybody else, and you can make some money at this. So it's kind of like, in my world, I work for the power company, right? So for these lights to come on, we have to have a perfect balance between supply and demand, right? So we are always playing this game about how much power do we generate, where's the load coming from. We can't store electricity yet. If you guys want to solve that problem for me, this was all worth it. If someone in here wants to solve battery storage for electricity, I'm with you. But that is not here yet. So we have to keep things in this perfect balance. The networks that clear these transactions by changing the rules, that's what they're doing. They're keeping that thing in perfect balance so that transactions aren't flying out the door too fast and it doesn't get too ahead of itself, because then you could throw their value of their currency could get thrown off. But if you think about that and think about, well, how do I win at this game, right? Speed's the most important. It's built for computers. All I need is computational power. I got this huge arms race going on. That's how you win. But for the most part, a single miner can't keep up. Right? They don't have the ability to continue to increase capacity and processing power to stay ahead of everybody else. So what they do instead is they join mining, what they call mining pools. So, you know, miners 1, 2, and 3, they all join together and they say, let's pool our resources and let's go after trying to solve some of these, and we'll split up the profits of whatever we make. And that's exactly how they act, because if you're number 2 in solving the problem, you get 0. You got to, kind of like Powerball tickets. You think about it that way, right? The jackpot was 90-some million, I think, driving in today. I saw, you know, if I go in by myself, I buy 1 ticket, I got 1 shot and however many millions of winning, but I'm going to get $93 million. If everyone in this room buys a ticket and we go in together, right, our chances of winning goes way up, but our slice of the pie goes down. So very similar concept to share of cost, share of profits. How do they work? There's two ways that they work. The first is you just get paid for trying. So if you get a bunch of people and they provide a certain amount of processing power to the pool, whether you clear transactions or not, the guy who's running the pool is going to give you money for bringing your CPU to the table to be used in that mining pool. So if you think about that, all the risk is on the guy who is running the pool, not on the individual miners. So you can imagine that the individual miners aren't getting paid a lot in that model, because the pool runner isn't getting paid unless the pool wins. So he's going to give a little bit, right, just to bring some people to the table and help them out. But you're not going to get a lot per solve of the equation. The other way to do that is almost the exact opposite, right, which is nobody gets paid. So the proportion that you get of each win goes up, but you get nothing unless your team wins. So 2 very different ways to pay for it. 2 very different versus risk on the pool owner. So depending on people's, I don't know, proclivity for taking risks, they might do either one. So that's kind of the basics of the crypto mining. How it works, what do they do? So you're probably sitting there going, well, you're a security guy, what are you talking to me about this for, right? It seems like a perfectly valid business proposition, right? You know what you're getting into, you know how you get paid when you come out of it, you know what you have to put into it. There's nothing really wrong with it, right? So why do we think it's a risk? What's the easiest way? You borrow it, you don't steal it. If I stole it, I'm going to take it and take it over here. I'm just going to let you keep it right where it is. I'm going to come in there and I'm going to use it right where it sits. They borrow it, they steal it, right? Easiest thing for them to do. If you think about big companies or companies where you work, you know, how many computers do you have? How many servers do you have in your environment? What's the overall processing power of that? How easy would it be for someone to write a little bit of malware, get into your network, find its way around, take control of all of your processing power? Hopefully it's not easy, because security professionals don't make that easy. But in theory, if you think about it, that's much less effort for miners to do than to go out and try to buy their own legitimate, set up warehouses, stick a bunch of CPUs in it. That happens too, though. And as a guy who provides electricity, I really wish more people would do that in our service territory, because they eat a ton of electricity. But you have guys that will run, they'll set up rooms like this, and it would be nothing but wall-to-wall processing power. And all it's doing is running one little piece of software to try to solve crypto algebra problems. And they'll pay the electric company, the one I saw paid about $700,000 a month in electricity to keep their CPU running and to keep their air conditioning running, to keep that room cold. And they continue to pop up everywhere. And I just saw somewhere the other day, some small towns across the country are trying to attract crypto miners because they bring good tax base. They don't take up a lot of space. They don't take up, there isn't much for them to eat up from an infrastructure standpoint, but they can make a ton of money, a big tax base, small footprint, and a good way to revive a small town somewhere. I think it was in upstate New York somewhere. I just saw one yesterday. But the reality is when this thing gets a hold of you, what happens is your PC's sitting there and it's still working. It just might feel a little slow, right? But nobody's ever experienced a slow PC before for any other reason, right? So half the time you may not even notice that it's going on, right? Just things seem a little bit, I think the reality is your CPU is churning away, it's burning up. It's just not doing it for the things you're trying to do. It's in the background and it's just running these algorithms, trying to generate revenue from you. There's two different types of mining software out there. There's a persistent mining software, and this is more like kind of traditional. It's weird to say things like traditional malware and normal. The one I catch myself saying a lot is, well, that's just a normal run-of-the-mill data breach. Anyone said that? My boss is like, hey, what's this all about? I said, just a normal run-of-the-mill data breach. And then, it's just so weird to say that, but that's kind of the reality, right? The persistent mining software is just like normal malware, right? It finds an exploit in your system, finds a way to get on, loads itself up, starts chewing your PCU, your CPU away. One to watch out for, just out of news articles, I guess, or maybe it's other information that I've gotten, but WebLogic, right? Does anyone use WebLogic on their web servers? WebLogic has a vulnerability in it that's been actively exploited for crypto mining software. There's a potential that it might have gotten into the network of a relatively big company not located here, kind of in the southeast United States, and caused them about 2 weeks worth of absolute screaming pain here recently. And it was all because there was a WebLogic vulnerability that was on their perimeter, right, on one of their DMZ applications, and it found its way in, and it spread throughout their entire network. So just awareness, if you use WebLogic, that you should be up to the latest and greatest patching levels. The other kind is more of a browser-based mining software. So you could be on a website, where we all have heard of adware, and we know that bad stuff's running in the back of these ads. It's a lot like that. So you go to a website, taking over some of the ad space on it potentially, or a part of the website where maybe they've hijacked it. And what it does is it'll run a little JavaScript in the background. And again, you won't even notice that it's going on. You're still looking at the website. You're still doing whatever you want on the website. But in the background, a little JavaScript's running. It's running mining software. The good news for that one is, when you close out of that web page, when you shut it down, the mining stops because it can only run while the page is up. Now, the thing you got to be careful of is people have gotten really smart. And when you close out of web pages, did you really close out of that web page, or did the window just disappear? Right? Have they coded around it so that when you click the X, instead of it actually sending the controls back to the window and closing it out, it just makes it really, 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 really small and maybe hides it down behind your taskbar. So now you're looking at your CPU spiked, you don't know what's going on, and you're looking at seeing what's running, you see nothing up, there's nothing, in your mind, there's nothing running on your machine unless you actually dig in and go look at the services that are still persistent. So you got to be a little careful about just closing out of windows. Closing down browser windows. So all that sounds like fun. How do you stop it? Right. That's the big thing. These are my own NIST categories. These are my own, right? Keep it from getting in, keep it from calling home, keep it from spreading. I don't think those are the real NIST categories, but that's what I like to call them instead of, what is it? Protect, identify, protect, defend, recover, whatever those things are. That's too formal for me. How do you keep it from getting in? domain blocking, IP blocking on your perimeters. Most of this stuff comes from places that maybe most of us don't do business with on a daily basis. Big suggestion would be if you don't do business with certain countries, or if your business is never going to do business with certain countries, depending on what business you're in, you should probably not be allowing web traffic coming into your block it way up at the front. Just don't even let it in, right? And just keep it from getting there. It really reduces the footprint and the number of potential attacks that all your other stuff has to catch. Just creates a lot less noise, less noise for you. Patching, we talked about that a little bit with the WebLogic. Patching is probably one of those things that most places say everyone agrees you need to do. No one probably does it as well as they want to do or should do. The big thing on patching, it's easy to patch Windows, right? We've all heard of, you know, it's Patch Tuesday. Here comes Microsoft's new patches, right? Go patch all your Windows systems. That's great. WebLogic's from Oracle. Oracle only patches once a quarter. Very easy to lose sight of a WebLogic patch that only comes out once a quarter. The event that I talked about before, the patch for WebLogic, I believe it came out in September, and the infection happened in February. So if they were patching upon the quarterly release, even if it took 30 days to get through, or 60 days to get through their patching cycle and their rollout, they never would have seen the problem. But because it got all the way to February and they hadn't patched, boom, big problem for them. Browser extensions and JavaScript, you know, that's for the browser-based malware only, right? If you're some certain browser extensions, if you don't allow them, they will stop the JavaScript from running. JavaScript itself is probably one of the more difficult things. I think a lot of people know that. It's one of the more difficult things to actually stop from running on your systems because it's embedded in so much stuff. Trying to figure out when you want JavaScript to run and when you don't want JavaScript to run can be very difficult. But if you don't care, just disable JavaScript from being able to run on your stuff. You might break some websites and some functionality of some browsers, and if those aren't critical to what you do as a business, then it's the safest thing to do, right? If you fail closed, you're going to be okay. And a lot of these, because they're running JavaScript in the background, obviously, if you're either using a browser extension that stops it for that website, or you've disabled it completely, they won't be able to run, and you've in effect stopped it from happening. Port blocking or port blacklisting. Most of these, they don't run on, you know, port 80 and port 443. Right? They're not running on clear web traffic or even encrypted web traffic. They're trying to take advantage of things you're not paying attention to. So they want to run on, you know, kind of these hidden ports down there that most people don't even realize. No, I shouldn't say most, that's probably an exaggeration. A lot of people don't realize even exist and are exposed to networks outside of your own. And people may not be looking at those and may not be watching them because they don't expect to ever see anything there. Well, if it's open, the bad guys will find it, right? And that's what they're trying to run on. So the more you tighten that down, the better off that you are, especially on outbound side, right? We should know that most traffic that you're doing doesn't need all these funky ports to communicate outbound. So yeah, inbound's great. Remember the way this works, inbound drops a little piece of malware on you, immediately tries to call back out to get the rest of what it needs to do. If you're blocking that outbound call, you're going to be okay. So whitelisting. So everyone runs whitelisting, right? It's one of the greatest tools known to mankind. It's the worst pain for your users of anything that you'll ever do, except for maybe removing their admin credentials. That one hurts too, which is also something that we should do here. Just general malware security. Nobody should have admin credentials that doesn't need it. Right? Nobody should be running their normal, sitting there at my desk and just running all day with their logged in with their admin credentials if they have them. Right? We all know people who've done it. Probably some of us may even do it ourselves. I can tell you the funny story about admin credentials. We don't allow admin credentials. Everyone has to have privileged access. They have special accounts to do things on. But on our intranet page, we made the bold decision to allow people to post reader comments against our stories that we publish every day around company news on our intranet site. If you're not doing that today, don't do it. If you are, sorry. But one thing that I insisted on when our people wanted to do this, I said, you have to log who the user is. There are no anonymous posts allowed. So whatever you're logged in as, when you make the post, it records that username and the whole company can see it. So hopefully trying to keep people, to keep it, cordial, keep it, safe for work, that kind of stuff. But I can tell you, I've seen our privileged accounts show up. So somebody who's logged in their privileged account is posting comments to a story, which who knows what else they're doing. If they're on that means they're, on looking at our intranet, where else are they going, right? But when it posts their name, I see a little dash and then the suffix after it. Those people didn't like me very much that day when I saw those, but we see it all the time. So don't give admin access if you can. That will definitely help you. Monitor those outbound ports, like I talked about before. Set alerts on it. That can be your savior, right? Even if you allow the traffic to go, at least alert on it and have somebody watching it. Because if you're not seeing it and then all of a sudden you see something trying to call outbound through a port that you've never seen used before, almost guarantee you that you got something bad inside that's reaching out to ask, what do I do now? So all these, seem to be fairly typical, good cyber hygiene practices, the things that a lot of cybersecurity folks will preach about. This, you need to do this, you need to do this. But if everybody was doing it, we'd stop seeing these infections. We'd stop seeing WannaCry. We'd stop seeing, Bitcoin, cryptojacking happening. But that's all I can say is those will all stop this as we know it today. Doesn't mean it's not going to change. Right now, we haven't seen a lot of crypto mining, cryptojacking software where they've added any sort of destructive capabilities or any of those kind of modules into their malware. They truly, so far anyway, are just trying to get in, are just trying to steal your processing power and make money that way. But it's not a big stretch to think that, hey, someone's going to do that, now they're going to write a wiping module to that malware and start cleaning up after themselves, right? Let me come in and I'll do all this stuff and then I want to get out and I'll just wipe the disk and I'm out the door, right? It's not a hard stretch for that to happen. Because that software exists. We've seen it in other places. To me, I always look at this in cyber hygiene, and the big thing I tell my folks all the time, and you may even have heard me say this before, but if you're doing all these things right, it doesn't mean that something bad's not going to happen to you. But what it means is you're going to be looking for a needle in a haystack instead of a needle in a stack of needles, right? And that's how I think about this problem is you've got to clear the noise so that when something happens, you're able to find it quickly and be able to react to it. So hopefully that helps you understand a little bit about what crypto mining, cryptojacking is, and some things to how you can protect against it. Questions? Comments?
So, this wasn't part of the talk, but are you aware of what you know where it's cost effective to mine cryptocurrency versus it's costing me more money to keep the lights on and fans running and use turning than it does with Bitcoin or whatever currency?
If I remember correctly, the guy who was spending $700,000 a month on electricity was making in a month.
Is there a set fee for how much they get for when they sell it?
No. It depends on, it depends a lot on how much is in the block, right? So if you solve the block and it's, 1,000 Bitcoin versus you solve the block and it was 100,000 Bitcoin, it's not just you get 1% and 1%. You might get 1% here and 3% over here, So the percentage itself can float depending on what's the size of the block. The other thing you have to, right now in today's world, that you have to, I won't call it a financial dilemma. Let's term it a ethical dilemma. If you want to be a crypto miner, is what people are using cryptocurrency for today. Most of it is not good stuff, right? Some of it is, and someday it may move, to mainstream, right? Where it is the way that you pay for things for very valid goods and services and whatnot. But in where we sit today, it's more used for illegal activities. So yes, you can make money on it, and crypto mining itself, as long as you're not stealing someone else's processing power to do it, is perfectly legal, right? There's nothing illegal about it. Doing commerce today, the problem is, do you want to be encouraging, by solving these transactions and making these transactions, encouraging the things that people are using crypto mining to pay for? Yeah.
How long do you think, how long is it a matter of time before the government steps in and says, hey,
Yes.
we can tax the heck out of
Yes.
this and generate a huge amount of money?
Yeah, if you think of kind of a cornerstone to the economy, right?
What other
It's
goods and services it could be used for?
you think of the entire banking system, right? And the fact that the concept of, I have a central bank that's managed, I can trace money, all transactions, all this, that's a foundation to the way that our country and many other countries run today. So what I would see happening is, if this truly starts to threaten the mainstream and more people want to trade, buy goods and services using this type of currency, and they start moving things out of the banks, you will absolutely see the government come in and try to make it function more like the bank that they know.
Do you think that the federal government to accommodate the shift in economic structure?
They may have to. They may have to, right? Just because if you think about a lot of this today, right? I can sell you something. I can, sell you this presentation, right? I can sell you this for a whole bunch of Bitcoin. That means nothing to me if I can't then turn that Bitcoin into something I want, right? So if the only thing that I can do is pay off rent, buy guns, buy people, buy drugs, which is what a lot of what it's being used for today, amongst some other really valid, just normal goods and services. Unless that's what I want to use it for, I have to turn it back into cash at some point, right? So you want to buy Bitcoin, there's at least one ATM in town that you can buy Bitcoin on. And you just go in, you tell them, here's my bank account. It'll take however much money you want out of your bank account. It will convert it to Bitcoin and put it in your wallet for you, and off you go. So you can do that. And then there are places where you can cash out your Bitcoin, just like every other, currency exchange, right? You get whatever the current exchange rate is. This amount of Bitcoin is this many US dollars, and people will do that transaction for you. You can get your cash back out. It's all going to depend on how much the marketplace develops to when you don't need to do that anymore, right? You can just leave it in Bitcoin because I know that I can get all the things I need on a day-to-day basis, right? I can go to the grocery store and I can use Bitcoin. I can, do whatever. I can pay for my gas at the pump with Bitcoin. Until that happens, that it will continue to be kind of a fringe player. But if it does get to that point, someone will step in and start regulating, and I guarantee it. The anonymity of money, getting sent back and forth, and that it's really hard to trace where it goes and what happens. The way our civilized world works today will not stand for that when it gets to that point. So there will be an attempt. How it will work and all that, I wish I knew, because I wouldn't be doing this anymore. I'd be investing in whatever I thought was going to solve that problem and wait for it to happen.
Right. I see it becoming mainstream.
Yeah, and you know, all it takes is enough people who are willing to exchange that way, and trust it and understand it, and, you know, but we'll see how long that takes. Yeah.
So kind of off topic, or on topic question, I like these questions. So has Dominion started thinking about using, like, infecting themselves with this malware on their computers and start running their CPUs and night when no one's using them to Bitcoin mine?
That's a fascinating question that I've never actually thought of.
Because you don't have all the power, so.
No, that's a fascinating question. No, I guess is the answer. We haven't thought about doing that, but I guess now you could say yes, because I'm thinking about it right now. I mean, I got a mainframe that nobody uses anymore, right? So what can I do with that? No, it's a very interesting question. I think, you know, I think as people figure that kind of stuff out, you know, that, hey, I've got this other business over here, but I really only run in these hours of the day. I can utilize those assets instead of just letting them sit there. I could see, you know, there being a business of going around and you coming to me and saying, hey, I got this idea, right? Let me install this. Let me use your off-cycle stuff, and I'll give you a cutback of it. You know, I'll give you a kickback, and you do that enough, and all of a sudden, boom, you've got a pretty powerful mining pool.
Like the state computers, state stops working after 5 o'clock. So.
Right, right. I didn't say that, by the way. He did. No, there are, you know, big companies like Dominion and others that have a huge investment in infrastructure like that, you know, I mean, I mean, we run 24/7, by the way, just so everybody knows.
Well, it's because of the tax, then.
Yes, it would.
So,
It would.
because you can always say, hey, we're doing maintenance, we're doing testing, we're doing any number of things to improve the power grid.
Yep. And then I'd be eating all our own power, which you guys pay for anyway, so thanks. I mean, there's the ethical downside there still, right? You still have that ethical downside piece there of what transactions are you actually enabling. So I don't think we would do it until it gets to a point where it's really the mainstream commodity. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Tom, in appreciation for coming, we're giving you one of our official coins. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah.
Awesome. Thank you. It's a. I was gonna say, yeah, it's a Bitcoin.
Oh, come on.
But can I buy anything with it? Is the question.
All right, folks. 10 questions from ISC squared. Based on the first domain, the CISSP test. Are you ready? Do the wisdom of crowds here. Let's see if it works. What is the final step of a quantitative risk analysis? A, determine asset value. B, assess the annualized rate of occurrence. C, derive the annualized loss expectancy. Or D, conduct a cost-benefit analysis. I have one C. This is a quantitative risk analysis. It's a tough one. D, I have a D, I have a C. We have a B, all right. Right, one B. Who was a C? Still on C? How many B's? All right, the answer is the final step of a quantitative risk analysis is conducting cost-benefit analysis to determine whether the organization should implement proposed countermeasures. There you go, quantitative. Number two, an evil twin attack that broadcasts legitimate SSID for an unauthorized network is an example of what category of threat? A, spoofing, B, information disclosure, C, repudiation, or D, tampering.
Spoofing.
How many A's do we have? That's the consensus. And indeed, A. Spoofing attacks use falsified identities. They may use false IP addresses, email addresses, names, or in the case of an evil twin attack, SSID. Very good. Number three, under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, what type of offenses do not require prompt action by an internet service provider after it receives a notification of infringement claim from a copyright? Understand the question? Information by a customer on a provider server. B, caching of information by the provider. C, transmission of information over the provider's network by a customer. Or D, caching of information in a provider search engine. Get it? Which one does not require the ISP to do something? D? We have a copyright infringement. What does the ISP? Which one does he not have to worry about? C. C. How many? So
Yeah,
we have
C.
A D. We have one D. How many C's do we have? Anybody other? Any other votes? All right. The answer is C. It's all about that transmission. If it's stored there, the ISP has to do something about it if it's a copyright infringement. But the transmission, they're not responsible for, right? Providers are not responsible for the transitory activities of their users. All right, number four. Flyaway Travel has offices in both the European Union and the United States and transfers personal information between those offices regularly. Which of the 7 requirements for processing personal information states that organizations must inform individuals about how the information they collect is used? Got the idea of the question? Mm-hmm. So here are the 4 possibilities. Notice, B, choice, C, onward transfer, or D, enforcement.
Would you like the question again?
Yeah. Which of the 7 requirements for processing personal information states that organizations have to inform individuals about how the information they collect is used? Which of the 7 requirements? And choices are A, notice, B, choice, C, onward transfer, D, enforcement. Okay, how many A's do we have? All right, and it is the notice principle says that organizations must inform. This is all part of Safe Harbor, which has now been replaced with the GDPR.
GDPR.
So, I guess these questions are probably still on the test. All right, number 5. Which one of the following is not one of the 3 common threat modeling techniques? Threat modeling techniques. Focused on assets, focused on attackers, focused on software, focused on social engineering. Which one is not a common modeling technique? Any guessers? What? D is in David?
D.
How many D's do we have? All right, still thinking? You think it's C? Sorry, B. Focused on attackers, how many B's do we have? Okay? I think you voted twice, that's not fair. Okay, all right. All right, answer is D. The 3 common modeling techniques are attacker, software, and assets, which are the first 3. So social engineering is a subset of attackers. Number 6, which one of the following elements of information is not considered personally identifiable information that would trigger most U.S. state data breach laws? A, the student identification number, B, a social security number, C, a driver's license number, or D, a credit card number. I think it's D.
I think it's E, all of the above, if not transmitted with some other piece of information.
All right, so how many A's do we have? A couple A's. How many D's do we have? Okay, several D's. All right, answer is A. It's directory information. Most state data breach notification laws are modeled after California's law, which covers Social Security, driver's license, state identification card, credit card numbers, bank account numbers, medical records, and public insurance.
According to PURPA, it's directory information.
Yeah. It's saying which one. It's saying which would trigger. The key was which one would trigger most state laws. So, yeah. 1991, the federal sentencing guidelines formalized a rule that requires senior executives to take personal responsibility for information security matters. What is the name of this rule? A, the due diligence rule, B, personal liability rule, C, prudent man rule, or D, due process rule. A, due diligence. Anybody else? I'm sorry? C? Any other C's? And C is the answer, the prudent man rule. It requires the senior executives to take personal responsibility. It used to only apply to financial data. After 1991, they made it apply to information security. Number 8, which one of the following provides an authentication mechanism that would be appropriate for pairing with a password to achieve multi-factor authentication? You've got a password plus, which one would make multi-factor? A, a username, B, a PIN, C, security question, or D, a fingerprint scan? D's, how many D's do we have? Okay, any others? Be brave. Answer is D, fingerprint. Because fingerprint is something you are. A password is something you know, and all those others were something you know as well. So they don't qualify. Number 9, what United States government agency is responsible for administering the terms of safe harbor agreements between the European Union and the United States under the EU Data Protection Directive? Is this handled by the Department of Defense, Department of the Treasury, the State Department, or the Department of Commerce?
Commerce, I think.
B. Yeah. B. U.S. Department of Commerce. In spite of what happened with the NSA surveillance disclosures, I think the Europeans are still angry about that. Number 10, Yolanda is the institution and is researching privacy issues related to customer checking accounts. Which one of the following laws is most likely to apply to this situation? GLBA, SOX, HIPAA, or FERPA? Sorry, B? B, SOX, okay. How many B's do we have? Okay, any other dissenting views? Maybe D? Okay. Answer is Graham-Lee, which applies specifically to financial institutions. All right, there you go. That's this week's edition.
That's pretty cool.
Michael, you have anything? David?
Good.
Bruce? I'm sorry? Yes, did everybody sign it?
Say there's another one even closer, yeah.
Really? You've never been to Legends?
No.
Oh my God.
I'm never coming back. Never guy leading the meetings, never been to Legend Brewery.
All right, so who would like to go to Legends?
You socialize and get more CPs.
All right, for those that would like to go to Legends, I think the invitation is open. I unfortunately have a proposal that I get done by morning, and so I am looking forward to the 45 minutes of that game.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you have a lot of work.
You have no idea.
Oh, I have an idea.
I have an idea that you're gonna be very scarce.
I am. Thank you everyone for coming. If there's no questions or any comments or suggestions for the next meeting, speak now. If not, thank you for coming.
All right.
Good time, you were coming to Legends?